I remember the smell first. Not flowers like people expect at funerals, no soft lilies or roses, but something sharper. Polished wood, cold air, and that faint chemical scent that clings to places meant for goodbyes. It felt wrong. Everything about that day felt wrong. My husband, Daniel, was lying in a closed room just beyond the hallway, and I hadn't even gathered the courage to step inside yet. People kept coming up to me, touching my arm, whispering words I didn't hear. "I'm so sorry, Ella. He was such a good man. You're so strong."
Strong.
I hated that word. If I were strong, I wouldn't feel like my chest was collapsing in on itself with every breath. I stood near the window, staring outside at the gray sky. It looked like rain, but it wasn't raining.
Just like me.
I felt like I should be crying, screaming, falling apart, but instead, I was hollow.
Numb.
That's when I noticed her.
Clara.
My sister-in-law. She stood across the room, dressed perfectly in black, too perfectly. Her makeup flawless, her posture straight, her expression carefully crafted. If someone didn't know better, they'd think she was the grieving widow. But I knew Clara, and something about her didn't sit right. She wasn't crying. Not once. Not even when people hugged her. She just performed. I tried to ignore it. Maybe grief looked different on everyone. Maybe I was imagining things because my world had just shattered.
But then I saw the man.
He stood near the entrance, tall, unfamiliar. Not a relative. Not a friend I recognized. And yet, Clara kept glancing at him. Not casually. Knowingly. Their eyes met for a split second. And in that moment, something cold slid down my spine. I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself this wasn't the time. I told myself I was just grieving. But I couldn't stop watching. Eventually, the room cleared out for a moment. People moved toward the reception area, leaving the main hall quieter, heavier. I finally found the strength to walk toward Daniel. Each step felt like walking through water. Slow, forced, unreal. When I reached him, I froze. He looked peaceful. That was the worst part. All the pain he had endured over the past months, the treatments, the exhaustion, the nights he couldn't sleep, it was gone from his face. His hands were folded neatly over his chest. And there it was, his wedding ring. I swallowed hard. I remembered the day we chose it. He had insisted on something simple. "Nothing flashy," he said, smiling. "I don't need a ring to prove anything. I just need you." I reached out and touched his hand. Cold. So cold. "I'm here," I whispered. I didn't leave. My voice cracked and finally, tears came. They fell quietly, landing on his sleeve. "I don't know how to do this without you," I said under my breath. And I meant it, because Daniel wasn't just my husband. He was my home. Footsteps echoed behind me. I didn't turn right away. I already knew who it was. "Ella," Clara said softly.
Too softly.
"They need to close soon." I nodded, but didn't move. "Just a minute," I said. She sighed. A small, almost invisible sound, but I heard it. Impatience. At a funeral. I turned slightly, enough to see her from the corner of my eye. She wasn't looking at Daniel. She was looking at the door. At someone waiting. That same man. Something inside me tightened. I stepped back, giving her space. If she wanted her moment, I wouldn't take that from her. I moved toward the side of the room, sitting down in a chair where I could still see everything. And that's when it happened. Clara approached Daniel slowly, like she was being watched. But no one was paying attention, except me. Her hands moved.
Quick.
Too quick. She reached down and slipped the ring off his finger. My breath caught. I thought no. No, I must be mistaken. But she didn't hesitate. She slid it into her pocket like it meant nothing, like it was just another object, not a symbol, not a promise, not his. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I just watched. Clara turned and walked calmly toward the entrance.
Toward him.
The man. I stood up without realizing it. My legs trembled as I followed, stopping just close enough to hear. Did you get it? He asked quietly. She smiled. Smiled. Of course, she said. It's real gold. We can sell it easily. My ears rang. Sell it?
For the car, he added.
She nodded. We're almost there. Just a bit more. They both laughed softly. At a funeral. At my husband's funeral. Something inside me cracked open. Not grief this time. Something sharper. Hotter.
Rage.
I must have made a sound, because Clara turned suddenly. Her face changed instantly, like a switch flipped. Ella, she said, rushing toward me. You shouldn't be walking around alone. You look pale. Her hand touched my arm. I wanted to shake it off. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. Because suddenly I understood something. This woman, this person standing in front of me, she wasn't grieving. She wasn't broken. She was calculating. And if she could do that here today, then what else had she been doing? I'm fine, I said quietly. She studied my face, searching. For what? Suspicion? Knowledge? But I gave her nothing. Not yet. The service ended soon after. The casket was closed. And with it, something inside me sealed shut too. Not my love. Not my grief. But my trust. That night, I sat alone in the house. The silence was unbearable. Every corner held a memory. Every object reminded me of Daniel. And yet, something else lingered. A question. A terrible, growing question. Had I really known the people around me? Had Daniel? Or had we both been living inside a lie? I stared at the empty space where he used to sit. And for the first time, since losing him, my grief was no longer the only thing consuming me. Now there was something else. The need to know the truth, no matter how painful it would be. The house felt different after the funeral, like it no longer belonged to the life Daniel and I had built together, but to something colder, quieter, almost watchful. Every sound echoed too loudly. Every shadow seemed deeper, and every object reminded me not just of what I had lost, but of what I might never have truly had. Clara moved through the rooms like she had already claimed everything, opening cabinets, rearranging drawers, making small changes that would seem harmless to anyone else, but to me felt like erasing Daniel piece by piece. She no longer pretended much in front of me. The softness in her voice was still there, but it had thinned, stretched too tight, like a mask she was tired of holding in place. 3 days after the funeral, I noticed she had already started removing his things. His jackets were gone from the hallway closet. His shoes disappeared from beside the door. Even the mug he used every morning had vanished from the kitchen shelf. When I asked about it, she didn't hesitate. It's better this way, she said lightly, scrolling through her phone. You can't heal if everything stays the same.
Heal.
The word irritated me more than it should have. I wasn't trying to heal yet. I was trying to understand how my husband's life had ended and what had been happening around him while it did. That same evening, I heard her laughing. Not a quiet, polite laugh, but real, unguarded laughter coming from the back patio. I froze in the hallway, listening. The sliding door was slightly open, and her voice carried inside. No, she has no idea, Clara said, amused. She's completely lost. It's actually easier than I thought. A pause, then softer. Yes, I'll handle it. Just give me a little more time. I didn't need to see who she was talking to. I already knew. The same man from the funeral. The same voice I had heard whispering about selling Daniel's ring like it was nothing. I stepped back quietly before she could notice me and returned to the bedroom, my heart pounding not from grief this time, but from something far more dangerous. Clarity. The pieces were starting to connect, and what they formed made my stomach turn. This wasn't something new. It wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This had been going on for a long time, and somehow Daniel had been in the middle of it. The next morning, Clara left early. She didn't explain where she was going, only muttered something about errands as she grabbed her keys. The moment the front door closed, the house fell into a silence, so heavy it felt intentional, like it was waiting for me to do something. And this time, I didn't ignore the feeling. I went straight to the bedroom. She had already begun to strip of Daniel's presence. The closet looked wrong, too empty on his side, too organized on hers. I ran my hand along the remaining shirts, pressing the fabric between my fingers as if I could still feel him there. But even that comfort was fading. His scent was gone, replaced by detergent and something unfamiliar, like he had already been pushed out completely. That's when I noticed the box. It sat on the top shelf, tucked behind a stack of neatly folded scarves. A plain box, nothing special, but placed too deliberately to be random. I dragged a chair over and reached for it, my hands shaking slightly as I pulled it down. For a moment, I just stared at it. I knew that opening it would change something. I didn't know what, but I knew I wouldn't be able to go back to not knowing. I opened it. Inside were photographs. At first, they seemed normal. Pictures of Clara and Daniel, vacations, dinners, birthdays.
Smiles.
Posed happiness. But the longer I looked, the more something fell off. Daniel's expressions changed over time. The earlier photos showed warmth, real joy. But later ones, his smile didn't reach his eyes. There was tension in his posture, distance in the way he stood beside her. I flipped faster, my breath becoming uneven until I reached the bottom of the box. There, beneath everything else, was a smaller envelope. My fingers hesitated before opening it, but I did, and everything inside me went cold. The photos were different. Clara, laughing, leaning into the same man from the funeral, his arm around her waist, her hand on his chest. Intimate, undeniable. There were dozens of them. Different places, different clothes, different dates. I checked the timestamps on the back of one. 3 years ago. Another. 2 years ago. Another. Just months ago. My vision blurred as I realized what I was looking at. This wasn't something that started recently. This had been happening while Daniel was alive, while he was working, while he was sick, while he was dying. I sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, the photos slipping from my hands and scattering across the floor. My chest tightened, not from sadness this time, but from the weight of something much darker. Betrayal, not mine, but his. And the thought that he might have known, or worse, suspected, made it almost unbearable. I forced myself to stand again. There had to be more. And there was. The nightstand drawer was slightly open, just enough to catch my attention. I pulled it wider and found a folder inside. Financial documents, bank statements, credit card records. At first, the numbers didn't mean anything, but then patterns started to appear. Large withdrawals on specific dates. The same dates Daniel had appointments, treatments, days he was too weak to leave the house alone. But the charges didn't match medical expenses. Hotels, restaurants, luxury stores. My hand tightened around the papers as the realization settled in fully. Money meant for his care had been used for something else entirely. For her life. For her relationship. For the man waiting at the edge of his funeral. I closed the drawer quickly when I heard the front door open. Too soon. My heart jumped into my throat as Clara's voice echoed through the hallway. "Ella," she called. "Are you home?" I shoved the papers back into place, pushed the drawer shut, and stepped away from the bed just as her footsteps approached. She stopped in the doorway, her eyes narrowing slightly. "What are you doing in here?"
I didn't panic.
I didn't hesitate. "I couldn't sleep," I said quietly. "I thought maybe I'd find one of Daniel's sweaters." She watched me carefully, searching my face. Then she smiled. "Oh," she said softly. "I donated most of his clothes already. It's healthier that way." Donated.
Just like that.
Without asking. Without thinking. Or maybe she had thought about it. Maybe she just didn't care. I nodded slowly, pretending to accept it.
Of course, I said.
"That makes sense." She relaxed instantly, satisfied. But as she turned away, her phone buzzed in her hand, and I caught a glimpse of the screen.
A name.
The same one I already knew. And this time I didn't feel shock. I felt something else. Something steadier. Something colder. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't just grieving. I was watching. And I was starting to understand exactly who I was living with. The moment everything truly shifted wasn't loud or dramatic. There was no confrontation, no raised voices, no shattered glass. It was quiet, almost ordinary. And that's what made it so powerful. Because by then, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was observing, calculating, waiting. Clara thought I was still the same broken woman from the funeral, drifting through the house in grief, too weak to question anything. And I let her believe it. I moved slower, spoke less, kept my eyes lowered when she was near. I let her feel in control. But inside, something had changed. The grief was still there, deep and constant, but now it shared space with something sharper. Purpose. Over the next few days, I paid attention to everything. The time she left the house. The way she dressed when she said she was running errands. The softness in her voice when she spoke on the phone, always stepping into another room, always lowering her tone just enough to seem private, but not enough to escape notice completely. Once, I heard her laugh again, that same unguarded laugh, and this time I didn't freeze. I stood still and listened.
"We're close," she said.
"I just need to handle one more thing." A pause. Then quieter. "She won't be a problem much longer." That sentence settled into me like ice. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail I had uncovered. The photos, the financial records, the ring, the man, and beneath all of it, one question that refused to go away. Did Daniel know? It felt impossible that he wouldn't. The changes in his expressions in those photos, the distance I had sensed in his voice during those last months, things I had dismissed as stress or illness suddenly looked different.
Clearer.
Painful in a new way. By morning, I had made a decision. I needed answers. Not guesses. Not assumptions. The truth. And I knew exactly where to start. Daniel's office. It was the one room Clara barely touched. Maybe because she never cared about it. Or maybe because she thought there was nothing valuable there. Either way, it remained almost exactly as he had left it. When I opened the door, the familiar scent hit me immediately. Paper, ink, and something faintly like the cologne he used to wear. For a moment, my composure cracked, and I had to grip the edge of the desk just to steady myself. Being in that room felt like stepping back into a version of life that no longer existed. "I'm sorry," I whispered, though I wasn't sure whether I was apologizing for what I was about to do or for not seeing everything sooner. I began with the obvious places. The desk drawers.
The shelves.
Folders neatly labeled in his handwriting. Medical records, insurance documents, work files. Everything was organized, just like he always kept it. But nothing unusual. Nothing that explained what I had found. I almost gave up. Almost. But then I remembered something small, something insignificant at the time. Years ago, Daniel had shown me where he kept a spare key to his filing cabinet. Just in case, he had said with a smile. In case I forget where I put the first one. I hadn't thought about it since. Until now. I crouched down and ran my hand along the underside of the desk. It took a few seconds, but then I felt it. A small piece of tape. And beneath it, a key. My pulse quickened. I stood up slowly and walked to the cabinet. For a moment, I just looked at it. Then I unlocked it. The drawers opened smoothly, revealing rows of files, all perfectly arranged. I scanned through them quickly at first, then more carefully. Nothing. Still nothing. But something in me insisted I keep going, that I was close. At the very back of the bottom drawer, partially hidden behind a stack of older documents, was a folder without a label. That alone was enough to make my heart race. I pulled it out. Inside were printed messages, text conversations, and the moment I saw the names, everything inside me went still.
Clara.
And him. The same man. The messages were detailed, casual, intimate in a way that left no room for doubt.
Plans.
Meetings.
Jokes.
Complaints. And then, mentions of Daniel. Not kind ones. Not concerned ones. Detached. Irritated. As if he were an inconvenience rather than a husband fighting for his life. My hands trembled as I turned the pages faster. Hotel confirmations. Receipts.
Dates.
All aligning with the same pattern I had seen before. This wasn't suspicion anymore. It was proof. But there was more. At the bottom of the folder, beneath everything else, was a single sheet of paper. Folded, worn at the edges, like it had been opened and closed many times. I hesitated before picking it up, because somehow I already knew. This wasn't something Clara had hidden. This was something Daniel had left.
For me.
I unfolded it slowly. And the moment I saw his handwriting, my vision blurred. Ella, it began.
Just my name. No explanation.
No warning. And yet, everything in me tightened. I don't know when you'll find this, the letter continued, but if you are reading it, then I'm no longer there to explain things myself. My breath caught. He knew. Of course he knew. I wish I could have told you everything, he wrote. But I didn't want to give you more pain while I was still here. You've already given me more than anyone ever has. I didn't want my last months to be filled with anger and legal battles. I wanted them to be with you. Tears slipped down my face, but I didn't stop reading. I found out about Clara over a year ago. At first, I didn't want to believe it. Then I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had proof. Enough to leave. Enough to confront her. But then I got sick. The words hit harder than anything else. I made a choice, he continued. Not because I forgave her, but because I didn't want my last chapter to be defined by betrayal. I wanted it to be defined by love. By you. I pressed my hand to my mouth, trying to hold back the sound building in my chest. I couldn't control what she did, he wrote, but I could control what she would take from me after I'm gone. My eyes moved faster now. I've made arrangements. Everything is handled. You'll understand when the time comes. Please don't let her manipulate you. She will try, but you're stronger than she thinks. Stronger than you think. The paper shook in my hands. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I thought I had more time. My heart broke all over again. I love you. Always. There was no signature.
There didn't need to be.
I sat there for a long time, the letter resting in my lap, my thoughts unraveling and rebuilding at the same time. Daniel had known. He had seen everything I was only now discovering. And instead of collapsing under it, instead of reacting impulsively, he had planned.
Carefully.
Quietly.
For me.
For you, I whispered. Not for revenge. Not for anger. For protection. That realization changed something deep inside me. This wasn't just about what Clara had done anymore. This was about what Daniel had left behind. And whatever those arrangements were, I was going to find them. Because now I understood one thing with absolute clarity. Clara thought she was winning, but she had no idea what was coming. By the time morning came, I wasn't the same person who had stood frozen in that funeral hall or wandered the house in quiet confusion. Something had settled inside me overnight. Not peace. Not yet, but direction. Daniel's letter hadn't just given me answers. It had given me a path. I've made arrangements. Those words repeated in my mind with quiet insistence, like a door waiting to be opened. I didn't know what I would find on the other side, but for the first time since his death, I wasn't afraid of the truth. I needed it. Clara barely acknowledged me that morning. She was too busy, moving quickly around the kitchen, checking her phone, replying to messages with a faint smile she didn't bother to hide anymore. At one point, she picked up a call and stepped into the hallway, her voice dropping into that same tone I had come to recognize. "Yes, today," she said. "We're moving forward. I'll handle it." I didn't need to ask what it was. I already knew. She was planning the sale of the house. My home. Daniel's home. The place where his life had ended and where mine was just beginning again in a completely different way. I finished my tea slowly, watching her reflection in the window rather than looking at her directly.
She thought she was ahead of me.
She thought I was still catching up, still processing, still weak. That assumption was her greatest mistake. And I wasn't going to correct it, not yet. "I'm going out later," I said casually, setting my cup down. "Just for a bit." She nodded without looking up. "That's good," she replied. "It'll be healthy for you." Healthy. I almost smiled. The office building wasn't impressive. Just a modest structure downtown, the kind of place you'd walk past without noticing. But the moment I stepped inside, something shifted. The air felt different, structured, deliberate, grounded in reality rather than emotion. This wasn't a place for assumptions or manipulation. This was a place for facts. The receptionist greeted me warmly, as if she had been expecting me. "You must be Ella," she said. "Mr. Carter is ready for you." Carter. So this was the man Daniel had trusted. I followed her down a quiet hallway into a conference room where a man in his late 50s stood as I entered. He had a calm presence, the kind that didn't demand attention but held it anyway. "Ella," he said gently.
"I'm Richard Carter."
"I'm very sorry for your loss." "Thank you," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. We sat across from each other, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. It wasn't uncomfortable, it felt intentional, like he was giving me space to settle before continuing. "He told me you might come," Carter said finally. That caught my attention. "He did." He nodded. Not directly, but Daniel was very thorough. He prepared for every possibility. A strange mix of pride and sorrow rose in my chest. "What arrangements did he make?" I asked. Carter studied me carefully, as if measuring how much I was ready to hear. "Before I answer that," he said, "I need to ask you something. Are you aware of the situation involving Clara?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." "Not everything, but enough." Carter gave a small, knowing nod, as if that confirmed something for him. "Daniel discovered her relationship over a year ago," he said calmly. "He gathered evidence. He had options, legal ones. But then his diagnosis came, and he made a different decision." "I read his letter," I said quietly. Carter's expression softened slightly. "Then you understand his priorities." I did. And that understanding made everything that followed feel heavier. He transferred the majority of his assets before his condition worsened. Carter continued, opening a folder in front of him. The house, his accounts, his investments, they are no longer in joint ownership. My heart skipped. What do you mean? I asked. It means, he said, sliding a document toward me, that the property you're currently living in is no longer legally tied to Clara. I stared at the paper, but the words didn't fully register at first. Daniel bought out her share, Carter explained. Quietly. Legally. She signed the documents herself. That's impossible, I said automatically. She would never agree to that. She didn't realize what she was signing, he replied. It was presented as part of a financial restructuring. She didn't read the details carefully. A slow realization began to spread through me. And now? I asked. Carter met my eyes directly. Now the house belongs entirely to you. The room went silent. Not empty, just still. As if the weight of that sentence needed space to settle. To me, I repeated. Yes, he said simply. Daniel created a trust. You are the sole beneficiary. I leaned back slightly, my hands gripping the edge of the chair. Clara. Her plans. The calls. The real estate agent. All of it, built on something that no longer existed.
She doesn't know, I said.
No, Carter confirmed. And from what I understand, she's already started making decisions under the assumption that she does. A strange calm spread through me. Not shock. Not even satisfaction. Just clarity. What happens next? I asked. That depends on you, he said. Legally, she has no authority over the property. She cannot sell it. She cannot claim it. And, according to the terms Daniel set, she will eventually need to leave unless you allow her to stay. I let that sink in slowly. All those nights she had been planning, all those conversations, all those calculations, based on nothing. There's one more thing, Carter said, pulling out another document. She has scheduled a meeting. I looked up. A meeting?
Yes.
With a real estate agent, to begin the process of selling the house. Of course she had. She believes she's in control, I said quietly. Carter nodded. The meeting is tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
The timing felt almost deliberate, like everything had been leading to that moment. Can I be there? I asked. A faint smile touched his expression. I was hoping you'd ask. When I returned home, Clara was already there, sitting in the living room with a woman in a tailored suit, papers spread across the table. They both looked up as I entered. Ella, Clara said smoothly. This is Amanda. She's helping me with the house. Helping her. I nodded politely and stepped inside. How interesting, I said. Will you both be at the meeting tomorrow? Clara's expression flickered. Just for a second. What meeting? She asked. Mr. Carter's office, I replied calmly. 10 o'clock. The room shifted.
Subtly.
But unmistakably. I wasn't aware of that, she said carefully. I'm sure it's just a formality, I said, offering a small smile. You'll come, won't you?
She studied me now. Really studied me.
For the first time. And I could see it.
Doubt.
Of course, she said finally. I'll be there. Good, I replied. I wouldn't miss it. That night I slept.
Not deeply.
Not peacefully. But without fear. Because for the first time, I wasn't waiting for something to happen to me. I was waiting for something to happen to her. And tomorrow. Everything she thought she knew, everything she believed she controlled, was about to disappear. The next morning felt unusually quiet, as if even the house itself was holding its breath. I woke up before my alarm, not from anxiety, but from anticipation. That alone surprised me. For weeks, every morning had started the same way, with heaviness, with the dull ache of loss pressing down on my chest before I even opened my eyes. But today was different. The grief was still there. It hadn't gone anywhere, but it no longer controlled the direction of my thoughts. Something else had taken its place. Focus.
Clarity.
readiness. Clara was already dressed when I came downstairs. She wore a sharp black suit, her hair styled perfectly, her posture confident. It was the same look she used when she wanted to appear composed, in control, untouchable. For a moment, I wondered if she had any idea what was coming. If some instinct inside her was warning her that today wouldn't go the way she expected. But if she felt it, she didn't show it. "You're coming?" she asked, glancing at me as I stepped into the kitchen. "Yes," I replied simply. She nodded, as if that confirmed something in her mind.
Good.
"It's better if we handle this together." Together. I almost said something then, almost corrected her. But I didn't. There was no need. The truth didn't require my defense anymore. It would reveal itself soon enough. The drive to the office was silent. Clara scrolled through her phone most of the time, occasionally typing quick responses, her expression calm, almost satisfied. Once, I caught her reflection in the window, and for a brief second, she smiled. Not at me, not at anything in the car, at a message, perhaps, at a plan she believed was already unfolding exactly as she intended. When we arrived, the man from the funeral, her accomplice, was already waiting near the entrance. He greeted her with a quiet confidence, placing a hand briefly on her back as if the gesture was natural, habitual. It made something twist inside me, but not the way it had before. Not with shock. Not even with anger. Now it felt like confirmation. "Everything will be fine," he murmured to her, loud enough for me to hear. "This is just paperwork. Just paperwork." I said nothing. We entered the building together, but not as a unit. Not anymore. The conference room was the same as the day before. Calm, orderly, neutral. Carter stood at the head of the table, a folder in front of him. When he saw me, he gave a slight nod, subtle, but reassuring. "Ella," he said, "thank you for coming." Then he turned to Clara. "Clara," he added, his tone shifting just slightly, more formal, less warm. She sat down confidently, placing her bag beside her, crossing her legs as if she were walking into a meeting she had already won. "I'd like to move forward with the sale of the property," she began immediately. "I've already spoken to an agent. The market is favorable, and I see no reason to delay." Carter didn't interrupt right away. He simply let her finish. Then he opened the folder. "I'm afraid," he said calmly, "that there seems to be a misunderstanding." Clara frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "The property in question," he continued, "is not legally yours to sell." The words landed quietly, but their impact was immediate. Clara blinked, as if she hadn't heard correctly. "That's not possible," she said. "My name is on the deed." It was, Carter corrected, but that changed. The man beside her leaned forward. "There must be some mistake," he said. "Ownership doesn't just transfer without consent." Carter slid a document across the table. "Consent was given," he said. "Signed, in fact." Clara grabbed the paper, her eyes scanning rapidly. At first, there was confusion, then disbelief, then something else, something sharper. This was refinancing," she said. "Daniel told me we were adjusting the mortgage." "It was presented that way," Carter replied evenly. "But the document clearly states a full buyout of your share of the property." Her face drained of color. "That's not, he wouldn't." "He did," I said quietly. The room went still. Clara turned to me slowly. "What did you say?" she asked. I met her gaze. "He knew," I continued, "about everything." Silence stretched between us. Her expression shifted, searching, calculating, trying to recover. "That's ridiculous," she said quickly. "You're confused. You're grieving." "I saw you," I said, my voice steady. "At the funeral, the ring, the conversation." The man beside her stiffened. Clara's composure cracked, just slightly. You don't understand what you think you saw, she said. I understand enough, I replied. Carter cleared his throat gently, bringing the focus back. To clarify, he said, the property is now held under a trust. Ella is the sole beneficiary. Clara turned back to him, her voice rising. That's impossible. I'm his wife. And you have received your legal portion, Carter said. The remainder was transferred prior to his passing, completely within the law. The man beside her leaned back now, his earlier confidence fading. This changes things, he muttered. Yes, Carter said. It does. Clara stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor.
No, she said.
I don't accept this. You don't have to accept it, Carter replied calmly, but it remains the legal reality. Her breathing had changed now, faster, uneven. She turned to me again. You think you've won something? She said, her voice low, sharp. You're alone. You've lost everything. I held her gaze. No, I said. I haven't, because in that moment I understood something she never would. She thought this was about possession, about property, about money, but it wasn't. It was about truth, and she had just lost control of it. There's one more detail, Carter added, his tone still measured. According to the terms set, you will need to vacate the property within 30 days. Clara froze. 30 days, she repeated. Yes. She looked at me, and for the first time, there was no calculation in her expression, only realization. You knew, she said quietly. I didn't deny it. She grabbed her bag without another word, turning toward the door. The man followed, his silence now complete. At the threshold, she paused, but didn't look back. Then she left.
Just like that.
No control. No plan.
No certainty.
The room felt different after she was gone. Lighter. Not because everything was resolved, but because something had finally been exposed. Are you all right? Carter asked. I nodded slowly. Yes, I said. And for the first time since everything began, I meant it. As I stepped outside, the air felt sharper, clearer. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. The house was quiet when I returned, but it wasn't the same kind of silence that had haunted me before. It no longer felt heavy or suffocating. It felt open, like something had finally been released. For weeks, every room had carried tension I couldn't name at the time, like the walls themselves were holding on to secrets. Now, those secrets had been dragged into the light, and what remained was something raw, but honest. Clara was already there. I found her upstairs, moving quickly through the bedroom, pulling clothes from the closet and throwing them into suitcases with sharp, impatient motions. Drawers were left open, shoes scattered across the floor, the neat order she usually maintained completely gone. She didn't look at me when I entered, but I knew she was aware of my presence. Her movements became more rigid, more deliberate, like she was performing even now, trying to hold on to some version of control that no longer existed. You don't have to leave today, I said quietly, standing in the doorway. You have time. She let out a short, bitter laugh. I'm not staying here, she replied. Not after this. I didn't argue. There was nothing left to argue about. For a moment, I just watched her. This woman who had been part of our lives, who had shared our home, our dinners, our routines. This woman Daniel had once loved. It felt strange now, trying to reconcile that version of her with the one standing in front of me. There's something I want back, I said after a pause. She stopped moving. Slowly, she turned to face me. What? She asked. Daniel's ring. The words hung between us. Her expression shifted, subtle, but unmistakable. That old thing, she said, trying to sound dismissive. Why does it matter now? It matters, I said. Give it to me. For a moment, I thought she might refuse, that she would hold on to it out of spite, out of pride, out of whatever remained of her need to take something with her. But instead, she turned away, walked to the dresser, and opened a small box. She hesitated only briefly before pulling the ring out and holding it in her palm.
She looked at it, really looked at it, as if seeing it for the first time.
Then she walked back and placed it in my hand. "There," she said flatly. "It's just a ring." I closed my fingers around it.
"No," I replied quietly.
"It's not." For a brief second, something flickered in her eyes. Not regret, not quite, but something close to realization. Something she wasn't willing to fully face. "Did he know?" she asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. I studied her face. This time, there was no performance.
No mask.
Just uncertainty. "Yes," I said. Her breath caught. "How long?" she asked. "Long enough," I replied. She looked away, shaking her head slightly, as if trying to reject the answer without actually denying it. "He should have said something," she muttered. I almost responded. Almost told her that he had chosen not to fight because he didn't want his last days defined by her betrayal. Almost told her that he had seen her clearly, even if she had never truly seen him. But I didn't, because it wouldn't change anything, and because deep down I think she already knew. She left before sunset. The man didn't come inside this time. He stayed in the car while she carried her bags out one by one, without looking back. I stood by the window, not out of curiosity, but out of closure. There was no triumph in watching her go.
No satisfaction.
Just an ending. When the car pulled away, I didn't feel lighter. I felt still, as if something inside me had finally settled into place. The days that followed were quiet, but no longer empty. I moved through the house differently now. Not as a guest in someone else's life, but as someone reclaiming her own. I opened windows, letting fresh air replace the stale atmosphere that had lingered for too long. I rearranged furniture, not drastically, but enough to make the space feel like mine again. I brought back small things Clara had removed, photographs, books, objects that held meaning. And slowly, the house began to change. Not into something new, but into something true. A week later, I sat at the kitchen table with Daniel's ring in front of me. I hadn't decided what to do with it yet. It felt too significant to simply store away, too personal to let go of, too symbolic to ignore. I picked it up, turning it between my fingers, remembering the way he used to absent-mindedly spin it when he was thinking. "You trusted the wrong person," I said softly. "But you didn't leave me unprotected." That was the part that stayed with me. Not the betrayal, not even the loss, but what he had done despite it. He had seen the truth, and instead of letting it destroy him, he had made sure it wouldn't destroy me. Weeks turned into months. Life didn't return to what it was before. Nothing ever does, but it moved forward. Not quickly, not easily, but steadily. I started going out more, reconnecting with people I hadn't seen in a long time, letting new routines form where old ones had been broken. Some days were still heavy. Some nights were still quiet in a way that reminded me of what was missing. But it wasn't the same kind of emptiness anymore. It was space. And space can be filled. One afternoon, while organizing a drawer in Daniel's office, I found something I hadn't seen before. A small notebook tucked between files. I opened it, recognizing his handwriting immediately. It wasn't a journal, not exactly. Just scattered thoughts, notes, reflections. I flipped through it slowly, and then I stopped. "Not everything that breaks is meant to stay broken," one line read. I stared at it for a long time, because that was it. That was what I had been trying to understand since the beginning. This wasn't just about loss, or betrayal, or even justice. It was about what came after. That evening, I went into the garden. It was one of Daniel's favorite places. He had spent hours there, planting, adjusting, creating something quiet and alive. I hadn't been able to go there since the funeral. It felt too close to everything. But now I stepped outside. The air was cool, the lights soft as the sun began to set. I walked slowly, letting myself take in the details I had been avoiding, the colors, the movement, the life that had continued even when mine felt like it had stopped. I sat down, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was holding on to something that was gone. I felt like I was carrying something forward. "I'm still here," I said quietly. Not to the silence, not to the past, but to myself. Clara had taken what she thought mattered: money, status, control. But she had never understood the one thing she could never take. What Daniel and I had shared, what he had protected, what remained. As the sky darkened and the first lights appeared in the distance, I slipped the ring onto a chain around my neck, letting it rest beside my heartbeat. Not as a reminder of loss, but as a reminder of truth, of strength, of everything that endures. And in that moment, I finally understood something simple, something that had been there all along. Some endings don't leave you empty. They leave you free.